If you can come up with a wrestling move no one has ever seen, you are laughing. Not literally. That's even more true today thanks to social media, but it's always been a great way to get attention. You etch yourself into history, and nobody can take that away from you. It's why history is awesome. As soon as you've affected it, there's no going back. This does have a negative side too though, because while during your creative period you think you've got gold, the future may have other ideas. Nobody can tell what the fallout of any decision is going to be, and there are plenty of amazing maneuvers that with the benefit of hindsight have become a huge issue. Look at that burning hammer. That is no good. I'm Simon from WhatCulture. This is 5 wrestlers who regretted inventing wrestling moves. Number 5, Mick Foley and falling off the cell. Since this happened at the King of the Ring 1998, Mick Foley has been very vocal about how he's not the biggest fan of his own idea. Being thrown off the cell and quite literally through it was incredible at the time, but it sparked a wave of expectation that has been cursing the industry ever since. That's called hyperbole. As soon as he took these spectacular falls which wowed an audience and made Foley a bigger star than he already was, every other wrestler on the planet started to think of ways to top it. If this did wonders for mankind, maybe it could do the same for them, which would transform their careers and get them to where they want to be. The problem there is that as this bar is continually raised, each dive becomes less and less impressive with smaller crowd reactions. That causes the audience to barely react, and before long you've got a bunch of wrestlers trying to kill themselves, and yet nobody cares. That is not the point of the industry. There's also the injuries that Foley himself suffered, which can't have been fun, and somehow even as the moves got more nuts, few pale in comparison to what happened to Mick. It was like being in a car wreck. I will never get over that tooth just sticking through his nose, lip, face. Finally, and potentially the main reason that the 3-time WWE champion regrets it, is the impression that it left. That night is so iconic it saw him labelled as a glorified stuntman by some, which isn't true if you know his whole career. Foley was one of the best all-rounders there was in the late 90s. Still though, you can't say he didn't leave a legacy, and that legacy will never be forgotten. Maybe he should have started pulling a sock out of his pants earlier than he did, however. I bet he would feel a lot better now. That's ridiculous, and usually ridiculous in wrestling equals a good time for all. Number 4, Hulk Hogan and the leg drop. Hulk Hogan should probably regret a lot he did both in and out the ring, but today we shall focus on his iconic finisher, the leg drop. Now I doubt the Hulkster invented this, but he certainly did popularize it, and few would have dared pick that as their finisher. The Immortal One bucked all the trends by heading down that route, and he went and made it work. Given that he was not a small man, however, it was an odd choice. Hurling his ass and lower back into the canvas night in, night out was always going to have an effect, as it did later down the line, where Hogan had to have multiple back surgeries to sort out his ailments. Hogan has talked about this in interviews too, saying it wasn't the smartest choice by him, as it really didn't fit in with his gimmick. He was meant to be a strongman-esque superhero, and yet he stopped opponents by jumping as high as he could in the air and then falling on them from said height. Doesn't really make much sense. Hogan mused on it so much that he actually tried to tie it into his character, arguing that he had the biggest arms in the world. The most obvious choice, to Hulk at least, would have been the sleeper. Not sure that would have been the best substitute. No one is going to get super excited when Andre the Giant falls to the floor after the oxygen depletes from his lungs. Hogan's back may be in better shape now, but 30 plus years of the leg drop means he's definitely not a fan of it, and I kind of understand. And again, it was a stupid idea to begin with. You probably could have got the same effect by just doing a big slam. Number 3, Ryback and his triple powerbomb. While the Shield seem permanently disbanded now after separating Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns onto Raw and SmackDown, and Dean Ambrose has left the company altogether, we shall always have the memories. A big part of these is always going to be their infamous triple powerbomb that caused problems for other wrestlers from the moment it was debuted. Admittedly, this is another one that doesn't make much sense. Rollins and Ambrose always looked a bit like they weren't doing much, but whatever. It worked and fans loved it. That is all that matters. Somewhat surprisingly, and to be taken with a pinch of salt because we know who said it, it was apparently Ryback that came up with this move when the threesome were thinking of ways to end their matches with a bang. The big guy had their back, suggested this, and the rest is history. And if you are keeping track too, that means that CM Punk invented the Shield concept, whereas Ryback was responsible for the finish. So what exactly Rollins, Ambrose and Reigns did, I don't know. It should be said that these days, the man who wants to be fed more regrets opening his mouth. During a 2017 episode of his podcast, Ryback outwardly said that he wasn't happy about it because, as it turned out, nobody took this move more than he did. So it was triple power bombs for days, including plenty of them through tables. Talk about good advice coming back to bite you in the behind. Also, Ryback, if you do ever listen to this, you and I should get together as wrestlers and become Wyback. There are fans chanting that already, and doing so right now. On that note too, you should probably go and listen to Ryback's podcast, because the man doesn't hold back, and he will talk about a range of subjects you probably don't expect a former WWE guy to talk about. It's a bit like Leo Rush. He came out recently and just waxed lyrical about what goes down behind the curtain, and he's still employed by the company, or at least he is, as I say these words. That is going to become a very, very interesting situation very, very quickly. Number 2, XPac and the Bronco Buster. When Sean Waltman returned to WWE in 1998, he needed something different. Aching as all wrestlers do, as well as the fact the company was now pretty juvenile, he felt his impressive arsenal needed an upgrade. But I'm not sure anybody expected this. Coming up with the Bronco Buster, it did fit his new D-Generation X roots perfectly. Part ludicrous and part humiliating, XPac would run at his enemy before launching his crotch into their face and then just bouncing up and down. If you want to call a spade, yes, he was basically taking his penis and trying to put it in somebody else's mouth. Okay. While it worked and helped Waltman re-establish himself, he was still now being asked to throw his sensitive area at people, and that comes with a serious risk. He was fine most of the time, but it all caught up with him in 2013 on an indie show. Going through his usual routine, XPac misjudged his dive, caught himself on the turnbuckle, and ripped open his anus. He started to gush from both holds, that being the old one and the new one, before going to hospital and receiving an emergency sphincterectomy. If that is a real thing, it sounds made up. Because he's a good dude, he laughed it off pretty quickly, but you gotta assume in that moment he regretted this a lot. I think I regret it because it sounds so awful. It's also a great reminder that there is no safe move in wrestling, as even something as audacious as this comes with a huge risk. It was a bit like when Vince McMahon tore both his quads at the Royal Rumble just because he slid in the ring. A confusing moment at the time for sure, but one that carries with it a serious warning when you remove the humor of Vinnie Mac just sat on a canvas yelling at two giant dudes in John Cena and Batista. To this day, I really would like to know what on earth they were thinking. You can never account for anything in this crazy business, including being safe when you're getting into the ring or thrusting your genitalia towards a rival's nose. And if that hasn't taught you a lesson today, then I feel you are unteachable and we'll all have to move on. Let's do that anyway. Number 1, Harley Race and the diving headbutt. It's one thing to invent a move that you regret because of the damage it does to your own body, and it's a whole other thing where it inspires others to do the same and also hurts them too. Then it becomes like an epidemic. This is the case with Harley Race and the diving headbutt, with the King being the first person to admit it was a mistake and implore others not to use it. It forced him into an early retirement, and when that happens, it's not hard to see the writing on the wall. Because this is pro wrestling, ultimately nobody heeded this warning, and it did do damage, especially to the likes of the Dynamite Kid. His hard-hitting version was directly responsible for his back issues that would eventually leave him in a wheelchair, and we all know what happened with Chris Benoit. That much force on your head and your brain is bad all round. Daniel Bryan also fell into this category where moves like this ended his career early. Amazingly, the Yes Man was able to return, but it doesn't take away from how worrying this move has become. Even worse, as wrestlers get more flashy and daring with what they bust out in the ring, the headbutt barely gets a response anyway. There's no flips in it for one. I think at best this gets moved into pile driver territory sooner rather than later, and hopefully WWE has already done that. If you've been watching Lars Sullivan recently, he was doing the diving headbutt for 2 weeks straight, and then he changed it for a running powerbomb. And I know what you're thinking. That idea probably came from Ryback. Hello, WhatCulture? My name is Simon Miller, and today I have an announcement so big, so huge, it's gonna shatter the very foundations of your life to the point you may need to phone up a friend and say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I have just heard the news. Have you heard the news? They'll probably say, no, I haven't heard the news, but you're already on the phone to them. You've already connected with them, so I would appreciate it if you either tell them the news or send them to this video. Thanks. So what is the news? Well, it's nice and simple. I've heard you out there. I've seen you've been commenting. I've read your tweets, and I can now officially let you know that if you do enjoy Raw ups and downs, if you do enjoy SmackDown ups and downs, that now you'll be able to set your watches to them. You'll be able to make notes in your calendars, because we're gonna have an official time for when they're gonna go live. I know, massive. So Ups and Downs for Raw will go live at 2 p.m. GMT, that's British time every Tuesday, and they will go live at 2 p.m. GMT every Wednesday for SmackDown. So you don't have to be aimlessly walking around anymore going, what do? I want to know what got up and what got down and what Seth Rollins did or what AJ Styles is up to. Now you know, 2 p.m. GMT Tuesday, 2 p.m. GMT Wednesdays, Ups and Downs coming at you in the face. I realize what I just said, retract that, keep moving on, and I hope to see you there soon. And I hope that we build an audience so big that if I ever wanted to march an army anywhere in the world, I could, and we'd call it the Ups and Downs Army, because I haven't come up with a better name. So yes, just to reiterate, Raw Ups and Downs, 2 p.m. GMT Tuesday, SmackDown Ups and Downs, 2 p.m. GMT Wednesday. I cannot wait to bring this brand new era in, and unlike other brand new eras, I've already let you know exactly what you can expect to see. Come on, 2019, Kenny Omega, we don't know where he's going, but you do know and you can always rely on Ups and Downs.